Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales, The Brothers Grimm. The Two Brothers. There were once upon a time 2 brothers, one rich and the other poor. The rich one was a goldsmith and evil-hearted. The poor one supported himself by making brooms and was good and honorable. The poor one had 2 children who were twin brothers and as like each other as 2 drops of water. The 2 boys went backwards and forwards to the rich house, and often got some of the scraps to eat. It happened once, when the poor man was going into the forest to fetch brushwood, that he saw a bird which was quite golden and more beautiful than any he had ever chanced to meet with. He picked up a small stone, threw it at him, and was lucky enough to hit him. But only one golden feather fell down, and the bird flew away. The man took the feather and carried it to his brother, who looked at it and said, "It is pure gold," and gave him a great deal of money for it. The next day the man climbed into a birch tree and was about to cut off a couple of branches when the same bird flew out. And when the man searched, he found a nest, and an egg lay inside it, which was of gold. He took the egg home with him and carried it to his brother, who again said, "It is pure gold," and gave him what it was worth. At last the goldsmith said, "I should indeed like to have the bird itself." The poor man went into the forest for the 3rd time and saw again the golden bird sitting on the tree. So he took a stone and knocked it down and carried it to his brother, who gave him a great heap of gold for it. "Now I can get on," thought he, and went contentedly home. The goldsmith was crafty and cunning, and knew very well what kind of bird it was. He called his wife and said, "Roast me the gold bird, and take care that none of it is lost. I have a fancy to eat it all myself." The bird, however, was no common one, but of so wondrous a kind that whoever ate its heart and liver found every morning a piece of gold beneath his pillow. The woman made the bird ready, put it on the spit, and let it roast. Now it happened that while it was on the fire, the woman was forced to go out of the kitchen on account of some other work. The 2 children of the poor broom maker ran in, stood by the spit, and turned it round once or twice, and as at that very moment 2 little bits of the bird fell down into the dripping tray. One of the boys said, "We will eat these 2 little bits. I am so hungry, no one will ever miss them." Then the 2 ate the pieces, but the woman came into the kitchen and saw that they were eating something and said, "What have you been eating?" "2 little morsels which fell out of the bird," answered they. "That must have been the heart and liver," said the woman, quite frightened. And so that her husband might not miss them and be angry, she quickly killed a young cock, took his heart and liver, and put them beside the golden bird. When it was ready, she carried it to the goldsmith, who consumed it all alone and left none of it. Next morning, however, when he felt beneath his pillow and expected to bring out the piece of gold, no more gold pieces were there than there had been. The 2 children did not know what a piece of good fortune had fallen in their lot. The next morning, when they arose, something fell rattling to the ground, and when they picked it up, there were 2 gold pieces. They took them to their father, who was astonished and said, "How can that have happened?" When the next morning they again found 2, and so on daily, he went to his brother and told him the strange story. The goldsmith at once knew how it had come to pass, and that the children had eaten the heart and the liver of the golden bird. And in order to avenge himself, and because he was envious and hard-hearted, he said to the father, "Your children are in league with the evil one. Do not take the gold, and do not suffer them to stay in your house any longer, for he has them in his power, and may ruin you likewise." The father feared the evil one, and Painful as it was to him, he nevertheless led the twins forth into the forest, and with a sad heart left them there. And now the two children ran about the forest, and sought the way home again, but could not find it, and only lost themselves more and more. At length they met with a hunter, who asked, "To whom do you children belong?" "We are the poor broom-maker's boys," they replied, and they told him that their father would not keep them any longer in their house because a piece of gold lay under their pillows every morning when they wake up. "Come," said the hunter, "that is not so very bad, if at the same time you keep honest and are not idle." As the good man liked the children, and had none of his own, he took them home with him and said, "I will be your father, and bring you up till you are big." They learned huntership from him, and the piece of gold which each of them found when he awoke was kept for them by him in case they should need it in the future. When they were grown up, their foster father one day took them into the forest with him and said, "Today you shall make your trial shot, so that I may release you from your apprenticeship and make you hunters." They went with him to lie in wait and stayed there a long time, but no game appeared. The hunter, however, looked above him and saw a covey of wild geese flying in the form of a triangle, and said to one of them, "Shoot me down one from each corner." He did it, and thus accomplished his trial shot. Soon after, another covey came flying by in the form of the figure 2, and the hunter bade the other also bring down one from each corner, and his trial shot was likewise successful. "Now," said the foster father, "I pronounce you out of your apprenticeship. You are skilled hunters." Thereupon the two brothers went forth together into the forest, and took counsel with each other and planned something. And in the evening, when they had sat down to supper, they said to their foster father, "We will not touch food or take one mouthful until you have granted us a request." Said he, "What then is your request?" They replied, "We have now finished learning, and we must prove ourselves in the world, so allow us to go away and travel." Then spoke the old man joyfully, "You talk like brave hunters. That which you desire has also been my wish. Go forth. All will go well with you." Thereupon they sat and ate and drank joyously together. When the appointed day came, their foster father presented each of them with a good gun and a dog, and let each of them take as many of his saved up gold pieces as he chose. Then he accompanied them a part of the way, and when taking leave, he gave them a bright knife and said, "If you ever separate, stick this knife into a tree at the place where you part, and when one of you goes back, he will be able to see how his absent brother is faring, for the side of the knife which is turned in the direction that he went will rust if he dies, but will remain bright as long as he is alive." The two brothers went still farther onwards, and came to a forest which was so large that it was impossible for them to get out of it in one day. So they passed the night in it, and ate what they had put in their hunting pouches. But they walked all the second day likewise, and didn't get out still. As they had nothing to eat, one of them said, "We must shoot something for ourselves, or we shall suffer from hunger," and loaded his gun, and looked about him. And when an old hare came running up towards him, he laid his gun on his shoulder, but the hare cried, "Dear hunters, do but let me live. 2 little ones to you I'll give," and sprang instantly into the thicket, and brought 2 young ones. But the little creatures played so merrily, and were so pretty, the hunters could not find it in their hearts to kill them. They therefore kept them with them, and the little hares followed on foot. Soon after this, a fox crept past. They were just going to shoot it, but the fox cried, "Dear hunters, do but let me live. 2 little ones I'll also give." He too brought 2 little foxes, and the hunters did not like to kill them either, but gave them to the hares for company, and they followed behind. It was not long before a wolf strode out of the thicket. The hunters made ready to shoot him, but the wolf cried, "Dear hunters, do but let me live. 2 little ones I'll likewise give." The hunters put the 2 wolves beside the other animals, and they all followed behind. Then a bear came who wanted to trot about a little longer and cried, "Dear hunters, do but let me live. 2 little ones I too will give." The 2 young bears were added to the others, and there were already 8 of them. At length, who came? A lion came, and tossed his mane. But the hunters did not let themselves be frightened, and aimed at him likewise. But the lion also said, "Dear hunters, but do let me live. 2 little ones I too will give." And he brought his 2 little ones to them. And now the hunters had 2 lions, 2 bears, 2 wolves, 2 foxes, and 2 hares, who followed them and served them. In the meantime, their hunger was not appeased by this, and they said to the foxes, "Listen, cunning fellows, provide us with something to eat. You are crafty and deep." They replied, "Not far from here lies a village, from which we have already brought many a fowl. We will show you the way there." So they went into the village, bought themselves something to eat, had some food given to their beasts, and then traveled onwards. The foxes, however, knew their way very well about the district and where the hen houses were, and were able to guide the hunters. Now they traveled about for a while, but could find no suitable place where they could remain together. So they said, "There's nothing else to do. We must part." They divided the animals so that each of them had a lion, a bear, a wolf, a fox, and a hare. Then they took leave of each other, promised to love each other like brothers till their death, and stuck the knife where the foster father had given them into a tree, after which one went east and the other went west. The younger, however, arrived with his beast in a town which was all hung with black crape. He went into an inn and asked the host if he could accommodate his animals. The innkeeper gave him a stable where there was a hole in the wall, and the hare crept out and fetched himself the head of cabbage. The fox fetched himself a hen, and when he had devoured that, got the cock as well. But the wolf, the bear, and the lion could not get out because they were too big. Then the innkeeper let them be taken to a place where a cow was just lying on the grass, that they may eat till they were satisfied. But when the hunter had taken care of his animals, he asked the innkeeper why the town was thus hung with black crape. Said the host, "Because our king's only daughter is to die tomorrow." The hunter inquired if she was sick unto death. "No," answered the host. "She is vigorous and healthy. Nevertheless, she must die." "How is that?" asked the hunter. "There is a high hill outside the town where dwells a dragon who every year must have a pure virgin, or he will destroy the whole country. And now all the maidens have already been given to him. There is no longer anyone left but the king's daughter. Yet there is no mercy for her. She must be given up to him, and that is to be done tomorrow." Said the hunter, "Why is the dragon not killed?" "Ah," replied the host, "so many knights have tried it, but it has cost all of them their lives. The king has promised that he who conquers the dragon shall have his daughter as a wife, and shall likewise govern the kingdom after his own death." The hunter said nothing more to this, but next morning took his animals, and with them ascended the dragon's hill. A little church stood at the top of it, and on the altar 3 full cups were standing, with the inscription, "Whoever empties the cups will become the strongest man on earth, and will be able to wield the sword which is buried before the threshold of the door." The hunter did not drink, but went out and sought for the sword in the ground. and was unable to move it from its place. Then he went in and emptied the cups, and now he was strong enough to take up the sword, and his hand could quite easily wield it. When the hour came when the maiden was to be delivered over to the dragon, the king, the marshal, and the courtiers accompanied her. From afar, she saw the hunter on the dragon's hill and thought it was the dragon standing there waiting for her, and did not want to go up to him. But at last, because otherwise the whole town would have been destroyed, she was forced to go the miserable journey. The king and the courtiers returned home full of grief. The king's marshal, however, was to remain and see all from a distance. When the king's daughter got to the top of the hill, it was not the dragon which stood there, but the young hunter, who comforted her and said he would save her, led her into the church and locked her in. It was not long before the seven-headed dragon came there with loud roaring. When he perceived the hunter, he was astonished and said, "What business have you here on the hill?" The hunter answered, "I want to fight with you." Said the dragon, "Many knights have left their lives here. I shall soon have made an end of yours, too." And he breathed fire out of his 7 jaws. The fire was to have lighted the dry grass, and the hunter was to have suffocated in the heat and smoke, but the animals came running up and trampled out the fire. Then the dragon rushed upon the hunter, but he swung his sword until it sang through the air and struck off 3 of his heads. Then the dragon grew right furious and rose up in the air and spat out flames of fire over the hunter and was about to plunge down on him. But the hunter once more drew out his sword and again cut off 3 of the heads. The monster became faint and sank down. Nevertheless, it was just able to rush upon the hunter, but with his last strength he slashed the tail off, and as he could fight no longer, called up his animals, who tore it into pieces. When the struggle was over, the hunter unlocked the church and found the king's daughter lying on the floor, as she had lost her senses with anguish and terror during the contest. He carried her out, and when she came to herself once more and opened her eyes, he showed her the dragon, all cut to pieces, and told her that she was now safe. She rejoiced and said, "Now you will be my dearest husband, for my father has promised me to whoever kills the dragon." Thereupon, she took off her necklace of coral and divided it among the animals in order to reward them, and the lion received the golden clasp. Her pocket handkerchief, which bore her name, she gave to the hunter, who went and cut the tongues out of the dragon's 7 heads, wrapped them in a handkerchief, and preserved them carefully. That done, as he was so faint and weary with the fire and the battle, he said to the maiden, "We are both faint and weary. We shall sleep a while." And then she said, "Yes," and they lay down on the ground, and the hunter said to the lion, "You shall keep watch, that no one surprises us in our sleep." And both fell asleep. The lion lay down beside them to watch, but he was also weary with the fight, that he called to the bear and said, "Lie down near me. I must sleep a little. If anything comes, wake me." Then the bear lay down beside him, but he was also tired, and called the wolf and said, "Lie down beside me. I must sleep a little, but if anything comes, wake me." Then the wolf lay down beside him, but he was tired likewise, and called the wolf and said, "Lie down beside me. I must sleep a little. If anything comes, wake me." Then the fox lay down beside him, but he too was weary, and called the hare and said, "Lie down near me. I must sleep a little, and if anything should come, wake me." Then the hare sat down by him, but the poor hare was tired too, and had no one whom he could call there to keep watch, and fell asleep. And now the king's daughter, the hunter, the lion, the bear, the wolf, the fox, and the hare were all sleeping a sound sleep. The marshal, however, who was to look on from a distance, took courage when he did not find the dragon flying away with the maiden, and finding that all the hill had become quiet, ascended it. There lay the dragon, hacked and hewn into pieces on the ground, and not far from it was the king's daughter and a hunter with his animals, and all of them were sunk into a sound sleep. And as he was a wicked and godless man, he took his sword, cut off the hunter's head, and seized the maiden in his arms and carried her down the hill. Then she awoke and was terrified, but the marshal said, "You are in my hands. You shall say that it was I who killed the dragon." "I cannot do that," she replied, "for it was the hunter with his animals who did it." Then he drew his sword and threatened to kill her if she did not obey him, and so compelled her that she promised it. Then he took her to the king, who did not know how to contain himself for joy when he once more saw his dear child alive, whom he had believed to have been torn to pieces by the monster. The marshal said to him, "I have killed the dragon, and deliver the maiden and the whole kingdom as well. Therefore I demand her as my wife, as promised." The king said to the maiden, "Is what he says true?" "Yes," she answered. "It must be true indeed. But I will not consent to have the wedding celebrated until after a year and a day." For she thought that in that time she should hear something of her dear hunter. The animals, however, were still lying sleeping beside their dead master on the dragon's hill, and there came a great bumblebee that alighted on the hare's nose, but the hare wiped it off with his paw and went on sleeping. The bumblebee came a second time, but the hare rubbed it off and slept on. Then it came for a third time and stung his nose, so that he soon awoke. And as soon as the hare was awake, he roused the fox, and the fox, the wolf, and the bear, and the bear, the lion. And when the lion awoke and saw that the maiden was gone and his master was dead, he began to roar frightfully and cried, "Who has done that? Bear, why did you not wake me?" The bear asked the wolf, "Why did you not wake me?" And the wolf asked the fox, "Why did you not wake me?" And the fox, the hare, "Why did you not wake me?" The poor hare alone did not know what answer to make, and the blame rested with him. Then they were just going to fall upon him, but he entreated them and said, "Don't kill me. I will bring our master to life again. I know a mountain on which a root grows, which, when placed in the mouth of anyone, cures him of all illness and every wound. But the mountain lies 200 miles from here." The lion said, "You have 24 hours to run there and come back and bring the root with you." Then the hare sprang away, and in 24 hours he was back and brought the root with him. The lion put the hunter's head on again, and the hare placed the root in his mouth, and immediately everything united together again, and his heart beat and life came back. Then the hunter awoke and was alarmed when he did not see the maiden, and thought, "She must have gone away while I was sleeping in order to get rid of me." The lion in his great haste had put his master's head on the wrong way around, but the hunter did not observe it because he was melancholy with thoughts about the king's daughter. But at noon, when he was going to eat something, he saw that his head was turned backwards and could not understand it, and asked the animal what had happened in his sleep. Then the lion told him that they too had fallen asleep from weariness, and on awakening had found him dead with his head cut off, that the hare had brought the life-giving root, and that he in his haste had laid the head the wrong way, but that he would repair his mistake. Then he tore the hunter's head off again, turned it around, and the hare healed it with the root. The hunter, however, was sad at heart, and traveled about the world, and made his animals dance before people. It came to pass that precisely at the end of 1 year, he came back to the same town where he had delivered the king's daughter from the dragon. And this time the town was gaily hung with red cloth. Then he said to the host, "What does this mean? Last year the town was all hung with black crape. What does the red cloth mean today?" The host answered, Last year, our king's daughter was to have been delivered to the dragon, but the marshal fought with it and killed it. And so tomorrow, their wedding is to be solemnized. And that is why the town was hung with black crape for mourning, but is today covered with red cloth for joy. Next day, when the wedding was to take place, the hunter said at midday to the innkeeper, "Do you believe, sir host, that while with you here today I shall eat bread from the king's own table?" "Nay," said the host, "I would bet 100 pieces of gold that will not come true." The hunter accepted the wager and set against it a purse with just as the same number of gold pieces. Then he called the hare and said, "Go, my dear runner, and fetch me some of the bread while the king is eating." Now the little hare was the lowest of the animals and could not transfer this order to any of the others, but had to go on foot himself. "Alas," thought he, "if I bound through the streets thus alone, the butcher's dogs will all but be after me." It happened as he expected, and the dogs came after him and wanted to make holes in his good skin, but he sprang away. Have you never seen one running? And sheltered himself in a sentry box, without the soldier being aware of it. Then the dogs came and wanted to have him out, but the soldier did not let them pass, and struck with them the butt end of his gun, till they ran away yelling and howling. As soon as the hare saw that the way was clear, he ran into the palace straight to the king's daughter, sat down under her chair, and scratched her foot. Then she said, "Will you get away?" and thought it was her dog. The hare scratched her foot for the second time, and she again said, "Will you get away?" and thought it was her dog. But the hare did not let itself be turned from its purpose, and scratched her for the third time. Then she peeped down and knew the hare by her necklace. She took him on her lap, carried him into her chamber, and said, "Dear hare, what do you want?" He answered, "My master, who killed the dragon, is here, and has sent me to ask for a loaf of bread which the king eats." Then she was so full of joy, and the baker had been summoned, and ordered him to bring a loaf that is such eaten by the king. The little hare said, "But the baker must likewise carry it there for me, that the butcher's dogs may do me no harm." The baker carried it for him, and as far as the door of the inn, and then the hare got on his hind legs, took the loaf in his front paws, and carried it to his master. Then said the hunter, "See, sir host, the 100 pieces of gold are mine." The host was astonished, but the hunter went on to say, "Yes, sir host, I have the bread, but now I will likewise have some of the king's roast meat." The host said, "I should indeed like to see that," but he would make no more wagers. And the hunter called the fox and said, "My little fox, go and fetch me some of the roast meat such as the king eats." The red fox knew the byways better, and went by holes and corners without any dog seeing him, seated himself under the chair of the king's daughter, and scratched her foot. Then she looked down and recognized the fox by its necklace, took him into her chamber with her, and said, "Dear fox, what do you want?" He answered, "My master, who killed the dragon, is here, and has sent me. I am to ask for some roast meat, such as the king is eating." Then she made the cook come, who was obliged to prepare a roast, the same as was eaten by the king, and to carry it for the fox as far as the door. Then the fox took the dish, and with his tail waved away the flies which had settled on the meat, and then carried it to his master. "Look, sir host," said the hunter, "bread and meat are here, but now I will also have proper vegetables with it, such as those that are eaten by the king." Then he called the wolf and said, "Dear wolf, go there and fetch me vegetables such as the king eats." Then the wolf went straight to the palace, as he feared no one. And when he got to the king's daughter's chamber, he twitched at the back of her dress, so that she was forced to turn around. She recognized him by his necklace, and took her into her chamber with her, and said, "Dear wolf, what do you want?" He answered, "My master, who killed the dragon, is here. I am to ask for some vegetables, such as the king eats." Then she made the cook come, and had to make ready a dish of vegetables, such as the king ate, and had to carry it for the wolf as far as the door. Then the wolf took the dish with him, and carried it to his master. "See, sir host," said the hunter, "now I have bread, meat, and vegetables, but I will also have some pastry to eat like that which the king eats." He called the bear and said, "Dear bear, you are fond of licking anything sweet. Go and get me some confectionery, such as the king eats." Then the bear trotted into the palace, and everyone got out of his way. But when he went to the guard, they presented their muskets and would not let him go into the royal palace. But he got up on his hind legs and gave them a few boxes on the ears, right and left, with his paws, so that the whole watch broke up. Then he went straight to the king's daughter, placed himself behind her, and growled a little. Then she looked behind her and knew the bear, and bade him go into her room with her, and said, Dear bear, what do you want?" He answered, "My master who has killed the dragon is here, and I am to ask for some confectionery, such as the king eats." Then he summoned her confectioner, who had to bake confectionery such as the king ate, and carried it to the door for the bear. And the bear first licked up the sugar drips which had rolled down, and then he stood upright, took the dish, and carried it to his master. "Behold, sir host," said the hunter, "now I have bread, meat, vegetables, and confectionery. But I will drink wine also, and such as the king drinks." He called his lion to him and said, "Dear lion, you yourself like to drink till you are intoxicated. Go and fetch me some wine, such as that which is drunk by the king." Then the lion strode through the streets, and the people fled from him. And when he came to the watch, they wanted to bar the way against him, but he did but roar once, and they all ran away. Then the lion went to the royal apartment, and knocked at the door with his tail. Then the king's daughter came forth, and was almost afraid of the lion, but she knew him by the golden clasp of her necklace, and bade him go with her into the chamber, and said, "Dear lion, what will you have?" He answered, "My master, who has killed the dragon, is here, and I am to ask for some wine, such as the king drinks." Then she bade the cupbearer be called, who was to give the lion some wine, like that which is drunk by the king. The lion said, "I will go with him and see that I get the right wine." Then he went down with the cupbearer, and when they were below, the cupbearer wanted to draw some of the common wine that was drunk by the king's servants. But the lion said, "Stop, I will taste the wine first." He drew up half a measure, swallowed it down in one gulp. "No," he said, "that is not right." The cupbearer glared at him, but went on, and was about to give him some out of another barrel, which was for the king's marshal. The lion said, "Stop, let me taste the wine first," and drew half a measure and drank it. "That is better, but still not right," said he. Then the cupbearer grew angry and said, "How can a stupid animal like you understand wine?" But the lion gave him a blow behind the ears, which made him fall down by no means gently. And when he got up again, he conducted the lion quite silently into a separate little cellar, where the king's wine lay, from which no one ever drank. The lion first drew himself half a measure and tried the wine, and then he said, "That may possibly be the right sort," and bade the cupbearer fill 6 bottles of it. And now, when they went upstairs again, but when the lion came out of the cellar into the open air, he reeled here and there, and was rather drunk. And the cupbearer was forced to carry the wine as far as the door for him, and the lion took the handle of the basket in his mouth and took it to his master. The hunter said, "Look, sir host, here I have bread, meat, vegetables, confectionery, and wine such as the king has. And now I will dine with my animals. And he sat down and ate and drank, and allowed the hare and the fox and the wolf and the bear and the lion also to eat and drink, and was joyful, for he saw that the king's daughter still loved him. And when he had finished his dinner, he said, Sir host, now I have eaten and drunk, as the king eats and drinks. Now I will go into the king's court and marry the king's daughter. Said the host, How can that be, when she already has a betrothed husband, and when the wedding is to be solemnized today? Then the hunter drew forth the handkerchief which the king's daughter had given him on the dragon's hill, and in which were the folded monster's 7 tongues, and said, That which I hold in my hand shall help me to do it. Then the innkeeper looked at the handkerchief and said, Whatever I believe, I do not believe that. I am willing to stake my house and courtyard on it. The hunter, however, took a bag with 1,000 gold pieces, put it on the table, and said, I stake that on it. Now the king said to his daughter at the royal table, What did all the wild animals want, which have been coming to you and going in and out of the palace? She replied, I may not tell you, but send and have the master of these animals brought, and you will know. The king sent a servant to the inn and invited the stranger, and the servant came just as the hunter had laid his wager with the innkeeper. Then said he, Now, sir host, the king sends his servant and invites me, but I do not go in this way. And he said to the servant, I request the lord king to send me royal clothing and a carriage with 6 horses, and servants to attend me. When the king heard the answer, he said to his daughter, What shall I do? She said, Have him fetched as he desires to be, and you will do well. Then the king sent royal apparel, a carriage with 6 horses, and servants to wait on him. When the hunter saw them coming, he said, See, sir host, now I am fetched as I desired to be. And he put on the royal garments, took the handkerchief of the dragon with the dragon's tongue with him, and drove off to the king. When the king saw him coming, he said to his daughter, How shall I receive him? She answered, Go to meet him, and you will do well. Then the king went to meet him and led him in, and his animals followed. But the king gave him a seat near himself and his daughter and the marshal, as bridegroom sat on the other side, but no longer knew the hunter. And now at this very moment, the 7 heads of the dragon were brought in as a spectacle, and the king said, The 7 heads were cut off the dragon by the marshal. Therefore today I give him my daughter as his wife. The hunter stood up, opened the 7 mouths, and said, Where are the 7 tongues of the dragon? Then the marshal was terrified and grew pale, and knew not what to answer, and at length, in his anguish, he said, Dragons have no tongues. The hunter said, Liars ought to have none, but the dragon's tongues are the tokens of the victor. And he unfolded the handkerchief, and there lay all 7 inside it. And he put each tongue in the mouth to which it belonged, and it fit exactly. Then he took the handkerchief on which the name of the princess was embroidered, and showed it to the maiden, and asked to whom she had given it, and she replied, To the man who killed the dragon. And then he called his animals, took the collar off of each of them, and the golden clasp from the lion, and showed them to the maiden, and asked to whom they belonged. She answered, The necklace and the golden clasp were mine, but I divided them among the animals who helped to conquer the dragon. The hunter then said, When I, tired with the fight, was resting and sleeping, the marshal came and cut off my head. Then he carried away the king's daughter and pretended that he was the one who killed the dragon. But with the tongues, the handkerchief, and the necklace, I proved that he lied." And then he related how his animals had healed him by means of a wonderful root, and how he had traveled about with them for 1 year and had at length again come there and learnt the treachery of the marshal by the innkeeper's story. Then the king asked his daughter, "Is it true that this man killed the dragon?" She answered, "Yes, it is true. Now I can reveal the wicked deed of the marshal, as it has come to light, for he wrung me from a promise to be silent. For this reason, however, I made the condition that the marriage should not be solemnized for 1 year and a day." Then the king bade 12 counselors be summoned, who were to pronounce judgment on the marshal, and they sentenced him to be torn to pieces by 4 bulls. The marshal was therefore executed, but the king gave his daughter to the hunter and named him victor and viceroy over the whole kingdom. The wedding was celebrated with great joy, and the young king sent for his father and his foster father and loaded them with treasures. And he sent for the innkeeper too and said, "Now, sir host, I have married the king's daughter, and your house and yard are mine." The host said, "Yes, according to justice it is so." But the young king said, "It shall be done according to mercy," and told him that he could keep his house and yard, and gave him the 1,000 pieces of gold as well. And now the young king and queen were thoroughly happy, and lived in gladness together. He often went out hunting, because it was a delight to him, and the faithful animals had to accompany him. In the neighborhood, however, there was a forest of which it was reported that it was haunted, and that whoever entered it did not easily get out again. The young king, however, had a great inclination to hunt in it, and let the old king have no peace until he allowed him to do so. So he rode forth with a great following, and when he came to the forest, he saw a snow-white deer, and said to his people, "Wait here until I return. I want to chase that beautiful creature." And he rode into the forest after it, followed only by his animals. The attendants halted and waited until evening, but he did not return. So they rode home and told the young queen that the young king had followed a white deer into the enchanted forest and had not come back again. Then she had the greatest concern about him. He, however, had still continued to ride on after the beautiful wild animal, and had never been able to overtake it. When he thought he was near enough to aim, he instantly saw that it was bound away into the far distance, and at length it vanished altogether. And now he perceived that he had penetrated deep into the forest, and blew his horn, but he received no answer, for his attendants could not hear it. And as night too was falling, he saw that he could not get home that day. So he dismounted from his horse, lighted himself a fire near a tree, and resolved to spend the night by it. While he was sitting by the fire, and his animals were lying beside him, it seemed to him he heard a human voice. He looked around, but could perceive nothing. Soon afterwards, he again heard a groan as if from above, and then he looked up and saw an old woman sitting in the tree, who wailed unceasingly. "Oh, oh, oh, how cold I am," said he. "Come down and warm yourself if you are cold." But she said, "No, your animals will bite me." He answered, "They will do you no harm, old mother. Do come down." She, however, was a witch, and said, "I will throw down a wand from the tree, and if you strike them on the back with it, they will do me no harm." Then she threw him a small wand, and he struck them with it. And instantly they lay still and were turned into stone. And when the witch was safe from the animals, she leapt down and touched him also with the wand, and changed him into stone. Thereupon she laughed and dragged him and the animals into a vault, where many more such stones already lay. As, however, the young king did not come back at all, the queen's anguish and care grew constantly greater. And it so happened that at this very time the other brother, who had turned to the east when they separated, came into the kingdom. He had sought a home and had found none, and had then traveled about here and there, and had made his animals dance. And then it came into his mind that he would just go and look at the knife that they had thrust in the trunk of the tree at their parting, that he might learn how his brother was. When he got there, his brother's side of the knife was half rusted and half bright. Then he was alarmed and thought, "A great misfortune must have befallen my brother, but perhaps I can still save him, for half of the knife is still bright." He and his animals traveled towards the west, and when he entered the gate of the town, the guard came to meet him and asked if he was to announce him to his consort, the young queen, who had for a couple of days been in the greatest sorrow about his staying away, and was afraid he had been killed in the enchanted forest. The sentries, indeed, thought no otherwise than that he was the young king himself, for he looked so like him, and had wild animals running beside him. Then he saw that they were speaking of his brother, and thought, "It will be better if I pass myself off as him, and then I can rescue him more easily." So he allowed himself to be escorted into the castle by the guard, and was received with the greatest joy. The young queen, indeed, thought that he was her husband, and asked him why he had stayed away for so long. He answered, "I had lost myself in the forest, and could not find my way out again any sooner." At night he was taken to the royal bed, but he laid a two-edged sword between them, and the young queen, between him and the young queen. She did not know what that could mean, but did not venture to ask. He remained in the palace a couple days, and in the meantime inquired into everything which related to the enchanted forest, and at last he said, "I must hunt there once more." And the king and the young queen wanted to persuade him not to do it, but he held out against them, and went forth with a large following. When he had gotten to the forest, everything happened with him as it did his brother. He saw a white deer, and said to his people, "Stay here, and wait until I return. I want to chase that lovely wild beast." And then he rode into the forest, and his animals ran after him. But he could not overtake the deer, so he got deeper and deeper into the forest, and was forced to pass the night there. And when he lighted a fire, he heard someone wailing above him, "Oh, oh, oh, how cold I am." Then he looked up, and the same witch was sitting in the tree. Said he, "If you are cold, come on down, little old mother, and warm yourself." She answered, "No, your animals will bite me." But he said, "They will not hurt you." Then she cried, "I will throw down a wand to you, and if you strike them with it, they will do me no harm." When the hunter heard that, he had no confidence in the old woman, and said, "I will not strike my animals. Come down, or I will fetch you." Then she cried, "What do you want? You shall not touch me." But he replied, "If you do not come down, I will shoot you." Said she, "Shoot away. I do not fear your bullets." Then he aimed and fired at her, but the witch was proof against all leaden bullets, and laughed and yelled and cried, "You shall not hit me." The hunter knew what to do, tore 3 silver bullets from his coat, and loaded his gun with them, for against them her arts were useless. And when he fired, she fell down at once with a scream. Then he set his foot on her, and said, "Old witch, if you do not instantly confess where my brother is, I will seize you with both of my hands and throw you into the fire." She was in a great fright, and begged for mercy, and said, He and his animals lie in a vault, turned into stone. Then he compelled her to go there with them, threatened her, and said, "Old witch, now you shall make my brother and all the human beings lying here alive again, or you shall go into the fire." She took a wand and touched the stones, and then his brother and his animals came to life again, and many others, merchants, artisans, shepherds, arose, thanked him for their deliverance, and went into their homes. But when the twin brothers saw each other again, they kissed each other and rejoiced with all their hearts. Then they seized the witch, bound her, and laid her on the fire. And when she was burnt, the forest opened of its own accord and was light and clear. And the king's palace could be seen at about the distance of a 3 hours' walk. After this, the two brothers went home together, and on the way told each other their histories. When the youngest said that he was the ruler of the whole country and the king's steed, the other observed, "That I learned very well, for when I came to the town and was taken for you, all royal honors were paid to me. The young queen looked at me as her husband, and I had to eat at her side and sleep in your bed." When the other heard that, he became so jealous and angry that he drew his sword and struck off his brother's head. But when he saw him lying there dead, he saw his red blood flowing. He repented most violently. "My brother saved me," cried he, "and I've killed him for it." And he bewailed him aloud. Then his hare came and offered to go and bring some of the root of life, bound it away, and brought it while there was still time, and the dead man was brought to life again, and knew nothing about the wound. After this they journeyed onwards, and the youngest said, "You look like me, have royal apparel on as I have, and the animals follow you as they do me. We will go in by opposite sides, and arrive at the same time from the two sides in the aged king's presence." So they separated, and at the same time came the watchman from the one door and from the other, and announced that the young king and the animals had returned from the chase. The king said, "It is not possible. The gates lie quite a mile apart." In the meantime, however, the two brothers entered the courtyard of the palace from opposite sides, and both mounted the steps. Then the king said to his daughter, "Say which is your husband. Each of them looks exactly like the other. I cannot tell." Then she was in great distress and could not tell. But at last she remembered the necklace which she had given to the animals, and she sought for and found her little golden clasp on the lion. And she cried in delight, "He who is followed by the lion is my true husband." Then the young king laughed and said, "Yes, he is the right one." And they sat down together and ate and drank and were merry. At night, when the young king went to bed, his wife said, "Why have you for these last nights always laid a two-edged sword in our bed? I thought you would wish to kill me." Then he knew how true his brother had been.